This week on Highway Fan Set 395, we'll feature Interstate 295, also known as the Clearview Expressway, the highway that takes you from the Bronx to Queens and the other way around. But there's also other highways to do that same exact thing, but today we'll just focus on I-295. 295 is about 9.5 miles from the southern end to the northern end, and if traffic is moving well, it's usually about 10 to 11 minutes to travel the full length. When I was making this video, there was a coastal flood warning, so that's why you see that. This is what I find most interesting about this interstate, that it does not start at a cloverleaf interchange or one of those exit ramp interchanges. It just starts at a random traffic light, which isn't usually how most interstate highways start. So we start 295 in Queens, and once we get on the interstate from that random interchange, we are immediately greeted with the Grand Central Parkway exit, and 295 being signed north, Clearview Expressway, the Bronx. We can see the same thing signed at random interchanges, 295 north, Clearview Expressway, Throgs Neck Bridge. That's the only difference in signage here, that it is not signed for the Bronx, and it is signed for the Throgs Neck Bridge instead. Here we meet with Interstate 495, the Long Island Expressway. This interstate starts in Manhattan and ends in Riverhead, hence the control cities, 495 West Manhattan and 495 East, Eastern Long Island. Here we meet with State Route 25A, also known as Northern Boulevard, and if I had not mentioned already, this is signed ordinally, which means the exits are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But it's not always the case in Long Island, but we get either an EW or AB situation, which I think is pretty interesting. Here is our final exit before the toll. This is Willets Point Boulevard, but also how you get to the Cross Island Parkway southbound. And we're signed 295 North, Throgs Neck Bridge, and the Bronx. And yes, it is a toll bridge, so be sure to have your Easy Pass. Here's one interesting thing I'd really like to point out. The fact that 295 on the Cross Island Parkway is signed not just for the Bronx, which they could easily set Throgs Neck Bridge in the Bronx. They also decided to put up New England, which I think was pretty good because of I-95. And here is what the Throgs Neck Bridge looks like once we get on it. It's a pretty cool bridge, and yeah, I was able to get street view on this bridge. And here we have the toll apparatus situation here. Now we're in the Bronx. I should mention from this point on, 295 is not going to be signed to Clearview Expressway anymore. It'll be given the name of the Cross Bronx Expressway. And here's our split with 695, and that goes to I-95 North. So if you want to go to 95 South, then stay on 295. I think that 695 is the most ridiculous interstate in New York, other than the 587 in Kingston, because 695 has no real exits, and it's just a connector route between 295 and 95. And here we get some travel information. We get to see how long it takes to get to the George Washington Bridge via 95 and 278 and 87. Typically, it'll tell you on the maps to stay on 95, but sometimes if you don't want to sit through the 95 traffic, you can get off at 278, cross the RFK Bridge, get on 87 North to finally end up on 95 South. Could save you time, it might not, but it's worth a shot. As they all say, all good things must come to an end. 295 comes to an end here at the 278 interchange, and 95 South forks off left towards the George Washington Bridge and New Jersey. Heading back south on 295 now. Here we are coming from I-95, which is signed north, New Haven, and 295 signed south, Throgs Neck Bridge. However, coming from I-95 south, we see that 295 is not just signed for the Throgs Neck Bridge, but it's also signed for Long Island. But like I said, 695 is the most pointless interstate in New York. But you can argue with me about that if you want. Here's our final exit before the toll. We get Harding Avenue and Pennyfield Avenue, with 295 still signed south Throgs Neck Bridge and Long Island. And one last time, here's our look at the toll before we go over the Throgs Neck Bridge onto Long Island. Here we are going southbound on the Throgs Neck Bridge. We see that we have an exit for the Cross Island Parkway in 1 mile, while 295 is now signed south, the Clearview Expressway. And here is our meeting again with State Route 25A, which is known as Norton Boulevard. And at random interchanges, we are signed 225 Hillside Avenue. Oh yeah, what else would you sign going south on 295? And here we meet with I-495 once again. 495 signed Manhattan and Eastern Long Island, just like it was going northbound. And now we finally meet with Grand Central Parkway before the 295 corridor ends at 25, which is also known as Hillside Avenue. And now here's the southern terminus of I-295. I hope you enjoyed this video on I-295, and you'll see more highway reviews soon. Have a good day, everybody.